We are moving right along, and our next speaker this morning, many folks don't know this, but he's the son of a master Army aviator, Vietnam vet who flew L-19s and H-13s with the 1st Cav in 65 to 66. So please welcome Lieutenant General Ted Martin, Deputy Commanding General, Chief of Staff of the United States Army Training and Doctrine Command, who will now talk about the aviation support and role in multi-domain operations. Ted.
Thank you. Well, I'm really happy to be here today. I feel honored to be in this community of superstars that I've really enjoyed my entire career, being at times very closely associated with. And so I am coming to you from Training and Doctrine Command. If anybody was at AUSA in October, they heard the Chief's question, which is, who here is a recruiter for the United States Army? A couple of folks made the mistake of not raising their hand, so I'll ask that same question. Who here is a recruiter for the United States Army? Hold them high, please. Next slide. So before I get going, I want to make a pitch for my favorite subject, and that is, I know that many of you out there are what we call influencers. So there's not a lot of folks that either aren't serving or haven't served, or maybe are just a tad bit over the induction age. But I know you're influencing those that do, and many of you either have or know young men and women that have either successfully completed high school or college and are ripe to find a way off your couch and into the real world. And may I suggest the United States Army is a great opportunity. And that's just one example up there right now called the STAR MOS. And as it so happens, I have a few recruiters in the back if you are interested in linking up with them. Sergeant Henry, where are you at? Sergeant Jensen and Captain Elledge from local recruiting. So if you or someone you know is interested in the Army, all you have to do is go to the back of the room. See, Frank, I put my money where my mouth is. Slide, if I could, please. So why is there an old tanker here talking to a bunch of professional Army aviators and people in the aviation community? Well, as General Munt said, it's in my blood. My father actually quit high school, joined the Navy during World War II, was an aviation machinist mate. At the conclusion of the war, he used the GI Bill, worked his way into the Army, and then that led to raising 4 young sons, all who served in the Army, none of which had the capability to become Army officers. I like to fly in Army aviators. I like to say it's because of my bad eyesight, but that would be a lie. I don't have the mental capacity. But I'm really proud to be here and excited to talk with you about Army aviation and its role in the maneuver battlefield. Slide, please. Okay, so as it would happen, unfortunately, my mother passed away about 18 months ago, and in the process of going through some of her letters, I found a tattered old letter that had free mail written on it. So, of course, I was interested in what might be in there. And it was a letter from one of our neighbors at my dad's last duty station, which was Fort Rucker, Alabama. And it was from Camp Eagle. So 1971. So as I'm reading through this page by page, I'm fascinated by what I'm reading. It was from a gentleman named, at that time, Lieutenant Colonel Bobby Fernander, commander of the 101st Aviation Battalion. And if you put 2 and 2 together, I started to learn a little bit more about what I had just a wave-top knowledge on, which is the Battle of Lam Son 719. So as I started looking into this, I was fascinated, and quite frankly, I was shocked by what was written in the letter, the numbers of helicopters that he lost, not only in his battalion, but in the entire aviation group and associated units that participated in this. And there's very likely a Lam Son 719 veteran or somebody that knows one in the room today. Just a couple of tidbits for the young folks out there. Huge operation, largest air assault operation of the war, but most significantly, it was against an entrenched, well-equipped enemy force over an extended period of time. Slide, please. So the more I read, the more I was interested in finding out what really happened on the ground. So I got my hands on the official after-action review that was written sometime in May of 1971, and every single fact that's associated with the battle was in there. And true to the letter that I held in my hands, the casualty figures were staggering. The contribution and sacrifice of the 101st Airborne Division, the 5th Infantry Division, but most importantly, the Army aviators that flew into the teeth of unimaginable AAA really resonated with me as I flipped through the pages. Simultaneously, our commanding general, General Steve Townsend, had challenged us to wrap our hands around something that I have absolutely no knowledge of, and that's, at that time, was artificial intelligence. When I hear artificial intelligence, being a tanker, I immediately jump to the conclusion that someone is once again trying to provide me with an automatic loader or some type of robot tank that will put me out of a job. How wrong I was. So stepping into the lessons learned from the campaign, Lam Son 719, slide please, and looking and thinking about the fact that the casualties and the aircraft losses were so very high, led me to the G2 shop inside of TRADOC, where Mr. Tom Greco was pitching the idea of trying to harness artificial intelligence in some way, shape, or form as we move towards a fully multi-domain operational environment. Now, for those of you that were at AUSA last October, you know that shortly after that, multi-domain operations version 1.5 was inked, signed, and endorsed by Army senior leadership, and then at that time was handed off to Army Futures Command. So Army Futures Command owns it, and they're taking it into the future for version 2.0. But TRADOC owns the fielded force. So we are dealing with the problems we are facing right now. Slide, please. Okay, so I asked myself, what if we have to do something like that in 2028? Will we be able to do that? With the promise of future vertical lift, increased soldier lethality, the entire Army Futures Command, in fact, the Army portfolio for modernization, will still leave us with that very tough nut to crack, which is an attack against an entrenched enemy that's highly sophisticated air defense that not only threatens the United States Air Force and the Joint Force fires that come in at high altitude, but it affects us where the rubber meets the road, where our most important resource, soldiers, will have to be placed on the battlefield. But what if we had to do that tomorrow? The chap in the picture there just happens to be my dad flying his H-13 over Pleiku Province, 1965. Slide, please. Okay, so what they faced in Lam Son 719, AAA, machine guns, 23 millimeter, 57, pales in comparison to what we face on the battlefield right now, and if aggregated by one of our near-peer competitors, we face a AAA threat like none ever before. Now, since 9/11, the aviation community has been putting our soldiers onto the target with precision, but mostly that has been done on our terms. When suppression of enemy air defense can be done at our time and our choosing in some instances, and we've been very successful at that. When it's at the enemy's time and the enemy's choosing, the results have not been quite as favorable. So realizing that we have to deal with this, we started thinking about what we should be doing at Training and Doctrine Command, and was there something we could do to assist in this area? Slide, please. So this, combined with some things that have emerged in the last 10 years, ubiquitous surveillance. Now it exists, and in the future, it will grow even more layers, from snipers to satellites and everything else in between. both manned and unmanned, will almost give us and the enemy 100% or as near to 100% as weather and non-human conditions allow idea of where things are on the battlefield. Camouflage will work to some extent, but ubiquitous surveillance is going to be the biggest challenge that we have. And we know that everywhere where we have a challenge, we are also going to have an opportunity. It works in our favor as well. Slide, please. So right now, when we talk about our near-peer competitors, we can just call them potential enemies. We either are at parity, or in many cases, the enemy is edging towards a positional advantage. Be it the classic example that I've shown here on the bottom of the slide, which is long-range artillery. Tube for tube, enemy artillery and rockets pose a serious and significant threat. It allows the enemy to conduct fires-based maneuvers. In layman's terms, what fires-based maneuvers means is that the enemy opens up a window where he can maneuver out of the effective artillery range, at least in theory, from our artillery and rocket systems. This poses a significant threat. It means that we will have to, unless the conditions are properly set, maneuver under enemy artillery fire or joint fires without the ability to correspondingly respond. That means when we have our three primary tasks, which are move, strike, and protect, the enemy will have an advantage. And what we're really looking to seize on is how we transition between move, strike, and protect seamlessly to move to those positions of advantage that General Richardson was talking about. So how do we do that? How do we better control those transitions? Slide, please. Well, working in our favor right now are a couple of things. The first thing, let's talk about the enemy. We've got a significant advantage over the enemy in that they have already put their chips on the systems that they're investing in. We know exactly what the capabilities of enemy long-range fires are going to be. They've put their money down on the aircraft that they're going to have in the future, what type of air defense missiles they have. They have basically made their decisions. That gives us an awesome advantage in that we know what we have to beat. The second thing we have working for us is that the Army is in a period of rapid reorganization right now with the standing up of Army Futures Command, the realignment of functions and resources across the Army. We are now poised to exploit the opening that has been presented for us. Probably the most important thing and most positive event that has happened since 2017 is that the Army has aligned its senior leadership with laser-like focus on the priorities that we will pursue. And those 6 priorities right there are game changers. I am not even aware of another time when the Army senior leadership, the Big Four, Secretary, Chief, the Undersecretary of the Army, and the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army are all fully aligned and applying the resources for our Army to modernize. So that while we are currently playing catch up and closing the gap, everything is trending in our favor. And the 2 biggest game changers that are out there that will affect this community are long-range precision fires and future vertical lift. When those 2 come together with the rest of the force, it will allow us to move from maneuver-based fires to fires-based maneuver parity and then overmatch. It's coming our way. It's trending positive. Slide, please. So what does that leave us with when we look at that problem that what if we had to face conducting an air assault operation to moving our most precious resource, which are our soldiers, into a position of advantage behind enemy lines? If we had to replicate Lam Son 719, how would we do that? What could we do? So as I look back on what's been going on at our combat training centers, in around 2013, we conducted a shift from conducting primarily mission rehearsal exercises to decisive action training environment, basically getting ready for large-scale combat operations. The Army has been turning steady since 2013. It has been a long haul. It's very difficult to catch up from 17 years of the type of warfare we've been doing to focus on that back to our skills that we will need to do to prevail in large-scale ground combat operations. But we've been on the move, turn after turn. The joint force has been going at it. But one thing we have not been able to crack is clearance of fires. It is a persistent problem where we have outstanding assets, a tough and difficult mission, and an inability to fly and fire with precision and safety at the same time. So how will we be able to insert those troops without having something like suppression of enemy air defense or destruction of enemy air defense on demand, a Netflix-like capability that we should be able to harness? As we talked to the TRADOC G2 about this, it became evident that this may actually be a target for artificial intelligence. Slide, please. So at that time, the plan was hatched to effectively sketch out the problem that we had and present it to DARPA. I had not had a lot of experience working with DARPA, but the TRADOC G2 and the rest of the TRADOC enterprise has. And so what we have done is presented to TRADOC, challenged them in effect to take on this mission of artificial intelligence enabling clearance of fires. And that's called cognitive airspace management. This is not that far away. We know where our aircraft are. We know where our fire systems are, and we will rapidly be known where the enemy air defense assets are. Our goal is to shorten the amount of time from acquisition to destruction of anything from a missile system to a machine gunner on top of a tank firing a Dishka at a helicopter. And that can all be done if DARPA can make the move and accept the challenge for what's classified as a DARPA hard project. It's almost there. We think we're going to get it, but they're going to take it on to harness the power of artificial intelligence to bring that capability into the hands of the Army. So our goal is to make that happen well before 2028. The sooner we can get this capability in the hands of our forces, the sooner we'll be able to tackle an almost impossible job like was handed to the Army aviators in 1971 at Lam Son 719. I am very excited about this opportunity to harness technology, and I think that we can do it. Slide, please. But there's something we have to tackle right away. So as we look to the future, we look for some technical and some solutions driven by high technology. We still have to deal with the ability of the enemy with ubiquitous surveillance to disrupt the way we currently conduct operations. The picture that you see is an aviation assembly area at the National Training Center taken within the last 12 months. It could have been taken 10 years ago, and it can be taken for the next 5 to 6 years. We are used to large formations because of the complexity of the mission, the maintenance, the sustainment of these forces. And what it has led us to do is have a vulnerability that must be and can be addressed right now without any technical solutions. We need to start thinking about how we're going to fight Army aviation in the future. No longer will we be able to have the huge air base at On-K to support the 1st Air Cavalry Division. We'll have to have small packets of aviation that can disperse on the battlefield and rapidly assemble to pick up that precious resource and then move it to a position of advantage where we can destroy what we need to and get them out just as rapidly. Dispersion is going to be the key to the future. Smaller, more capable units with leaders that can lead independent formations rapidly assembled to accomplish dangerous and complex operations. Right now, I assess this to be our Achilles heel, and it is not only in the domain of Army aviation. The heavy force has the same problem. So I would challenge industry now to think about The aircraft and the weapon systems that you're producing in the future cannot have the long logistical tail that they have. They cannot be as maintenance intensive as they are now. I don't know how to fix this problem, but I know that the people that can solve this problem are at this convention here today. And that is my challenge to you. Slide, please. So as I said, the tactics are going to change, and it's not going to happen from the top. We've had 17 years, so lieutenant colonels now have only known one type of battlefield, very few exceptions. So it's going to take young people that are getting turn after turn after turn at our combat training centers, dealing with these problems to solve them at the tactical level. I'm pretty sure that there's somebody that has been getting whomped at either the JRTC or the National Training Center will figure a way out on how to do this. We need to enable them with the appropriate technology and inspired leadership that will let them practice, fail, try it again, make it better, put it together, and do it at a training center, and then be prepared to take it on the battlefield. This enemy still resides and awaits us on the next battlefield. Slide, please. Like I said, the tactical solutions that we're looking for are not coming from a bunch of old people like me. I think they're coming from young people. And just, we can look through history and see that not a lot of generals are popping out the tactics that are successful on the battlefield. That's Ardent Dupic, an infantry lieutenant colonel from the French Army, Captain Little Hart, the British Army before World War II, and they came up with the tactics and the procedures that were effective on the battlefield. So who's the next one going to be? I'm pretty sure one of them that came up here and collected one of these trophies is a prime candidate. So as I wrap this up, slide please, did I forget to mention that everybody in the Army is a recruiter? And here's something to think about here at the, in the land of aviation. Did you know that right now, or on April 26th, the final chess move will be made that brings Army aviation into the complete control of the initial military training enterprise. On April 26th, Brigadier General Lonnie Hibbard will take command of the Center for Initial Military Training at Fort Eustis, Virginia, where he'll be responsible for all basic combat training, advanced individual training, OSIT, and the doctrine that will help develop our officers and non-commissioned officers. Already, Major General Frank Muth commands U.S. Army Recruiting Command at Fort Knox, and his wingman, sitting right next to him over there, is Major General John Evans. So Army Aviation is in the lead for accessions. So I feel it's my duty to help them out today and just remind everybody here that if there's a young man or woman out there that feels like it's time to serve their country, get off the couch and get in to fight. We're here to help you out. My old driver and now Army recruiter, Staff Sergeant Henry, is in the back of the room. Thank you very much. It's been great spending time with you. Hope that hit the target.
Thank you so much. Well, I got to tell you, that was a great brief, and thank you so much for taking time out of a schedule, as you know, that is quite busy and packed.